Bring in show music, please.
This is Squawk Pod, and I'm CNBC producer Cameron Costa. On today's episode, Silicon Valley and geopolitics. First, a new report from the Wall Street Journal. Elon Musk chatting to Vladimir Putin? CNBC's Eamon Javers has the details on this report so far.
There's just no question that Vladimir Putin would have been trying to utilize Elon Musk as an asset for the Russian state. The question is, what was Elon Musk thinking he was doing?
And Alex Karp, CEO of software company and government contractor Palantir, is urging America to go on the offensive. His co-founder Joe Lonsdale joins us, and he says it all comes down to politics.
I can only speak to what people are telling me on my WhatsApp channels, and they are pissed off at what's going on with this administration. They're furious. If you look at who does Israel want to win, the Israelis clearly think Trump is a better president for them.
Plus a baseball game for the ages. We all want to watch, but it'll cost you if you're going in person.
I have not been to a Taylor Swift concert yet, but I think you could get Taylor Swift tickets for less.
It's Friday, October 25th, 2024, and Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Elon Musk adding another $26 billion to his wealth yesterday. Surge in Tesla stock. He's now worth $256 billion. That's according to Forbes. But this morning's Wall Street Journal is putting a new spotlight on Mr. Musk, reporting that he had, quote, secret conversations with Vladimir Putin. Among other items, the paper reports that Putin asked Musk to avoid activating his Starlink satellite internet service over Taiwan as a favor to Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Eamon Javers joins us from Washington. It is a story that is already making noise at this very early hour.
Yeah, it absolutely is, Andrew. This is an important and astonishing story here from the Wall Street Journal, an enormous scoop by them. I should say at the outset that CNBC has not been able to independently confirm all the information in this story, but to give you a sense, here's what the Wall Street Journal is reporting this morning. As you suggest, they're saying that Musk has been in regular contact with Vladimir Putin since late 2022. They're also saying that the discussions included personal topics, business, and geopolitical tensions, and saying that Putin asked Musk, as you say, not to activate Starlink over Taiwan as a favor to Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Now, we should say that the Wall Street Journal story here is sourced to a number of officials, American, European, and Russian officials, confirming the existence of these conversations, which have not been previously reported before. I've spent the evening last night after this story broke talking with several former high-ranking U.S. intelligence officials, and here's what I can tell you their reaction was overnight. They're saying that it's unclear, first of all, if Musk has disclosed his contacts with Vladimir Putin as were required under his top-secret U.S. security clearance. They're also saying that failure to report contacts with foreign nationals can be grounds for suspension and in extreme cases, especially if it's deliberate failure to disclose foreign intelligence contact, the person could be charged with criminal charges. The U.S. may be trying to intercept Putin's communications, and Musk could have been recorded here, depending on the technology used. The NSA would normally refer to Musk as just U.S. person number one in any intelligence reports about those conversations. But if his identity is relevant here, U.S. intelligence reports may expressly reference Elon Musk's name in any reporting around any conversations between the two men that would have been intercepted by U.S. intelligence. We don't know any of that at this hour. There's still a lot that we don't know, including the exact content of these conversations. We don't know what Musk's intent was in having these conversations. Musk has been active on his social media platform this morning. I have not seen any comment from Elon Musk. We'll be eager to hear from him as soon as we can as to what his intent was in having these conversations with Vladimir Putin. But certainly, guys, this morning, some enormous questions being raised about why Elon Musk has been in regular contact, as the Wall Street Journal reports, with Vladimir Putin.
So a couple of things, Eamon. I don't know if you remember, but if you go back to 2022, there was a moment where Ian Bremmer, who runs a firm called Eurasia, has been a guest on our program many a times, made a comment about Elon Musk suggesting that he was talking to Putin at the time. Elon Musk then came out and denied it. You also have this interesting piece in the Journal story where the Kremlin spokesperson is confirming that there was dialogue between them, but suggesting that the dialogue only took place once. I'm not saying once is good or bad. I'm just saying that he's saying it's once. And the story itself is suggesting something very, very different, unless you think that we're misreading it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, fascinating that the Kremlin would even confirm the single conversation, but they are in this piece quoted on the record saying there was one conversation, but no more than that. That's the Russian story here. The Wall Street Journal reporting that there have been regular contacts between the two men since 2022. And the question is, again, Andrew, what was Elon Musk's intent? Why does he need to reach out to Vladimir Putin? Clearly, Vladimir Putin has every reason to talk to Elon Musk, given the war in Ukraine, the value of SpaceX to the Pentagon, the value of Starlink on the battlefield in Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin, this is an oft-repeated cliche about him, but Vladimir Putin is a former KGB official. There's just no question that Vladimir Putin would have been trying to utilize Elon Musk as an asset for the Russian state. Right. The question is, what was Elon Musk thinking he was doing in those conversations, and what did he actually do in those conversations? Nothing in this story beyond that general description of the content of the conversations, though. And the question I have in my mind as reading that piece is whether the United States actually intercepted those conversations and whether there are people in U.S. intelligence who know what Elon Musk was saying to Vladimir Putin.
Well, I think that is the big question. But the other thing that I was going to ask you is there's this idea in the article that because he has so much, quote unquote, power insofar as he obviously controls Starlink, SpaceX, and all sorts of other things, that somehow the government, if the government knew this, that they were somehow treading lightly on this. Do you believe that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, that squares with my understanding of reality here. I mean, the U.S. government is in some ways in a box here, Andrew, right? Because they can't get to space without SpaceX, right? The Pentagon has a billion-plus classified contract with SpaceX. We have U.S. government contracts in terms of Starlink communications around the world. All of that is important to the Pentagon. And you saw Boeing's failure to get the astronauts off the space station, right? It's not like we have reliable other alternatives in this country, or at least as many as we used to. So that is a problem for the U.S. government. This is a big, powerful industrialist in the United States on the scale of which we just haven't seen in the U.S. maybe ever, but certainly in generations. And this is a person that the U.S. government has to deal gently with. According to my conversations with U.S. intelligence officials last night, it is possible for them, if Elon Musk did not report these conversations, we don't know that, but if he did not report these conversations as required under his top secret clearance, it is possible he could be heading for a revocation of his top secret clearance. But if you're the U.S. government, again, you're in a box there, because with Elon Musk, his prickly personality, his giant ego, do you drive him farther into the arms of Vladimir Putin by pulling his top secret clearance than would achieve any good, right? I mean, you saw what happened when Joe Biden hosted GM at an EV event at the White House without inviting Tesla. That sort of overt snubbed Elon Musk and Tesla because they're a non-union shop. That rankled Elon Musk, and there's some analysis which says that event was really what drove Elon Musk toward the Trump campaign and his hugely important role in the Trump campaign now. So if you are the U.S. government weighing all these things, do you go after an attempt, if it's possible, to pull his clearance? That's an open question.
Eamon, one of the biggest questions the piece raised for me was this idea of whether or not he kept Starlink from Taiwan at Vladimir Putin's request. Vladimir Putin, according to this article, suggested that it would be a huge favor to China if he didn't do that. You look it up, and there is no Starlink there right now, but it's because Elon Musk wanted a joint venture, apparently. Taiwan won't allow joint ventures, so they've said no. Taiwan is now in the process of building their own satellite network because they also felt a little uncomfortable with Elon Musk, just based on some of his past comments about China. How you sort that situation out, and he's already said that, if Trump loses, they might try and put him in jail.
And Trump has been, when he was asked how many times has you talked to Putin after the reports came out, he's been in contact with Putin off and on for the last couple of years. And I think he deflected that question at the time as well. I don't know if he has any more.
He doesn't have top secret clearance anymore, though, right? Is it
Right, but you could, if it was only Starlink, whenever it was discussed, you could almost make a case that that's something that, I don't know. Obviously, it's sticky. Should Trump be talking to Putin? Should anyone be talking to Putin, or should everyone be trying to talk to Putin to try and end this thing and have no more bloodshed? I don't know what the right thing is. Or are we trying to degrade the Russian army and? Right?
I mean, the law is the rule is if you have a top secret clearance, you shouldn't be talking to foreign nationals, certainly not the leader of a hostile power, without disclosing those conversations to U.S. intelligence. The question here is, did Musk do that? Right. Look, it may be that he did do that. Right. And it may be that there are people in the U.S. government who are aware of these conversations and have been aware of these conversations.
Seems like they know.
And the other question here around this story, Joe, is who leaked this and why? And it clearly is a shot across the bow of Elon Musk. Somebody's trying to get him to knock it off.
Well, it is October. Palantir and L3 Harris announcing a strategic partnership. The goal is to bring together Palantir's AI technology and L3 Harris's hardware to help the military make better decisions faster and to improve communication systems. Palantir CEO Alex Karp appeared on Closing Bell Overtime yesterday, where he called for more offense when it comes to defending our country.
We should have a department of offense. And the other, I personally believe we have to have red lines, and then we should go ahead and violate them to show people how serious we are. Why do we wait till our enemies attack? It makes no sense. It does not lead to peace. You have this famous thing, it's a paradox of thrift, where if you oversave, you get poorer, which every progressive learns. It's tattooed on our bodies. There's a paradox of violence. If you never use violence, the world gets more violent. And so we need patriotism and competence and a willingness to use violence. And I don't know why we wait till people get up and hurt us, kidnap us. And last not least, as I've said over and over, if you touch an American citizen, we will go after you. We'll go after your assets. We'll go after everything. We can keep on going for generations. We cannot allow people to just kidnap and kill Americans wantonly and then say we're going to have a memorandum at the United Nations, essentially an academic institution that pushes papers for despots. So we really need to change our footing on this. And by the way, we're in a position to do it because our economy is the strongest in the world. We're the only people producing AI. We have the best CEOs in the world, and we have the best warfighters in the world.
Well, just looking up how many U.S. hostages are still left over there, and I don't know. All we hear about are calls for moderation and restraint.
Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella giving up some cash from his salary in the wake of the cybersecurity issues that impacted that company earlier this year. Nadella still received a pay raise, though, of more than $30 million, but the package would have been $5.5 million higher. Nadella received $79.1 million for the fiscal year that ended June 30th. That's up from $48.5 million in the prior year, according to the filing. It's a 63% increase. Most of his pay is in the form of stock. The requested reduction came after the U.S. Department of Homeland Security back in April published a report that followed an independent review of China's breach of U.S. government officials' email accounts. Microsoft disclosed that incident in July 2023. In January of this year, then Microsoft said that Russian intelligence had accessed some of the company's top executives' email accounts as well. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I saw the story. I saw that there was a headline that said that he had asked to take less money in light of this, and then saw that he made more money. And I sort of tried to hold both ideas in my head.
I mean, it's not often that you hear a CEO ask for less money. So I hand him that. I will hand him that. For
a lot of times, my salary's $1 million a year, and then you look at everything else, and it's like $42 million. if you take into account the other stuff.
It depends on, was it stock that was given to him? Was it restricted shares? Was it stock options that have now come into the money because the stock's been up? Oh, okay, 13.5% for a year to date, but look at a longer term for Microsoft and let's see how high that has risen over the last couple of years because of AI and because of what they've done with OpenAI.
Microsoft.
Yeah, okay.
They have
over 5
it. So
years, it's up 200
It's been a great
points,
performance as a stock.
200%.
Over 20
So
years, it's been probably the best, one of the best. No, not the best.
But Satya Nadella has been
amazing.
singularly responsible for some massive gains in that stock for what he has done. And I would say, again, it depends on were these restricted shares that were granted at some point, were these options that were granted at some point, did that pay come in as a result of this? And I don't know.
I will say this.
And you're right,
we're often very critical of executive compensation. And I often argue that there's, at the CEO level, for a lot of companies, there's not a market for those people at those numbers.
That. I know you.
No, because sometimes you say to yourself, there's not some other company that's going to pay you $70 million. However, in Satya's case, I actually think that there are other companies that would try, if they could pick him off, they would.
And there's the counterfactual that you can always argue that Microsoft, that he's done things and made decisions. We know when you see a bad CEO, you can see how many bad things they can do.
There is no doubt
time.
that Satya Nadella is a great
Look
CEO.
at Boeing or take your pick. There are places where if it's a bad CEO, you can see it.
And where they prioritized the wrong things, where they weren't investing in the company, where and every other constituency, from the shareholders to the workers, suffered as a result.
And don't forget tonight, Shohei versus Aaron Judge, and add those two together, and you're probably close to Satya per year. They do different things. They do them very well, and I'll take them, and I want them here. I want to watch.
The reason they can do that is because of the advertising dollars that will be spent on
people in the
direct market for it.
Right,
exactly.
they are responsible. They are rainmakers.
There's some CEOs
that
are, you got the board, and you got their friends, and they couldn't go anywhere else, and they're making all this money. There are cases of that. You're right, but there are cases of.
I'm saying that this may be one of those cases.
I know you are.
In a good way.
I know you are. I know, and that took a lot for you. And
it does take a lot for me. I've known Satya a long time, and he's done an extraordinary job for this company.
Tim Cook.
Tim Cook, same story.
Same story.
Right.
Cheese will be next.
Next on Squawk Pod, a wide-ranging conversation with Palantir co-founder Joe Lonsdale.
Elon works for the national security state. You have to follow the rules when you work for the national security state. I find it highly unlikely he's breaking the very clear rules you're given when you do that. So I think it's probably a very silly attack.
We'll talk more about Elon Musk and Russian President Vladimir Putin, the race for the White House, the so-called deep state, the war in the Middle East, and so much more. I told you it was wide-ranging. Buckle up for more Squawk Pod after this break. This is Squawk Pod.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, along with Joe Kernan and Becky Quick. The Wall Street Journal has an eye-opening report this morning on potentially secret conversations that may have been taking place between Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin. Among other items, the paper reporting that Putin asked Musk to avoid activating his Starlink satellite internet service over Taiwan as a favor to Chinese leader Xi Jinping. For more on this and so much more on the election, Silicon Valley, and the economy, Joe Lonsdale is here at the table, Palantir co-founder, of course, 8 VC founding partner, and someone who never really holds back. So, and a longtime friend of Elon Musk. So let me ask what you make of this report.
Yeah. So what's going on, Andrew, is you got to look at the background right now. Europe is panicking. The Harris camp is panicking. There's 2 weeks to the election, and they are throwing stuff at the wall. And what's happened in the last couple of weeks? What's happened is there's amazing momentum against the Harris team, right? So you have tell them not to go into Israel. They kill the bad guys in Israel. They looked really, really dumb, telling them to stay out of Rafah where they got Sinwar, right? You got the Tabatatai, who worked for Mali, who they brought in, clearly seems to be leaking stuff. That her father worked for the Iranian regime. Europe right now, of course, really angry at Musk. They had to fire Thierry Breton, the commissioner, who used to be a minister in the French government. People in the French government do not like Elon right now, right? He just shamed them. Just 2 days ago, it came out they're trying to kill Twitter. So basically they have all this momentum against them, and they're panicking and they're throwing stuff at the wall. And the last time we talked about Russia this close to an election, it was the intelligence community working on a fake document that Hillary created. They spent 3 years investigating him for BS. So it's like you have this context that you have to look at.
What do you think? I want to hear what you're saying. So go ahead. Are you finished?
No, I was going to say, but what do you think the validity of the report is? Meaning, do you believe that he is talking to Putin? And if he is, do you think that's appropriate?
So I have no idea if he's talking to Putin or not. I think the main thing, as far as I could tell, is they accused him of not giving something to Taiwan. You can look up very briefly, the Taiwanese government has not given permission for Starlink to operate in Taiwan. Elon works for the national security state. He lots of his companies do. He has, I have companies that do as well. You have to follow the rules when you work for the national security state. I find it highly unlikely he's breaking the very clear rules you're given when you do that. So I think it's probably a very silly attack.
And the rules are, if you are talking to a foreign government, particularly a hostile foreign leader, you have to report it, right? That's what Eamon was telling us earlier. We're trying to figure it out.
There's all sorts of rules that I'd be shocked if you broke them. But I mean, the accusation, as far as I could tell, is turn off Taiwan. Of course he wouldn't turn off Taiwan.
No. We saw it was a joint venture that the country requires. We kind of talked about that earlier. The country requires, and that's why he's not there.
My understanding is that you're not allowed to do diplomacy on behalf of the United States, and I'm confident he's not.
I think part of the question is, so if you got a phone call, because you have security clearance too for certain things, I imagine. If you happen to get a phone call from Putin just on your phone when you leave the broadcast today, whether you have to report that call to the government or not.
If you talk about anything relevant to national security, you definitely would have to. You definitely would have to, just tell them what's going on with that. But again, I think this is really important. There's so much momentum on the Trump side in foreign policy the last couple of weeks. It's just almost comical how bad it's gone for them. So you're going to see them throw more stuff at the wall, and you have, I think deep state's kind of a silly term, but it's kind of a real term because you have bureaucrats who are basically do not want to obey him. These guys attacking Trump right now are people who try to go around him, and they're going after him. So they're going to try a lot of this stuff.
Elon could knock this down pretty quickly by just saying, "Hey, I haven't broken any national security requirements or anything along those lines." We had Ackman on this week, and he said part of the reason that you are suspect of what happened with earlier issues with that last presidential debate was because they haven't come out and denied some of these things. It'd be pretty easy for him to just say this is not true.
I'm sure he will if he finds it necessary. At the same time, I think people are trying to create distractions to go and get.
Let me ask you a question. As someone who spends a lot of time thinking about defense, and you are 100% right that this administration has been very outspoken about trying to tamp down things and prevent or at least seemingly appear to prevent Israel from escalating things. And clearly, I would argue the things that Israel has done in the recent weeks have been a great success. And so the appearance on the other end of looking like you were not in favor of that looks like a loss. Having said that, there are people, and maybe you're going to say this is a deep state view, but a deep state view that while they have said certain things publicly, and maybe you can argue this is hypocritical, privately, they have continued to support Israel in almost all of these endeavors. Is that true or not? So, because some people say, well, look, they're trying to placate Europeans, French, the this, the that. They're trying to maybe placate the left in the U.S. There's all sorts of things going on. But when it actually comes to the reality of the battlefields, they have not shifted at all.
So the reality for me is I have friends who are in various senior positions in Israel. I have cousins in Israel. I have friends I've worked with there. Obviously, Palantir supports Israel closely, and my friends are extremely frustrated with this administration. They are texting me, this is ridiculous, we are being told not to do this, they're turning us around. Multiple times they could have taken out the Hezbollah leader earlier and they were stopped. There's all these things they want to do. So on one hand, yes, there is some support. Obviously, it's still very important for Israel as an ally. On the other hand, I can only speak to what people are telling me on my WhatsApp channels, and they are pissed off at what's going on with this administration. They're furious. If you look at who does Israel want to win, the Israelis clearly think Trump is a better president for them. So it's very funny. One of the attacks on him is that he's Hitler and all these things like that. But you ask the Israelis, they really want him to win.
Right. What do you make of that, by the way?
I think you alluded to the same. You almost sounded like he was going to go to where Howard Lutnick went. That you've got a lot of generals came up and were appointed through the Obama administration, and you don't want to call it the deep state, but there are people that say deep state.
You can call it deep state. Basically, if you want to call something a deep state, what that is to me is it's people who don't like receiving orders from the politically elected people, right? There are a lot of people in the bureaucracy in D.C., in the generals, who are offended by the fact that the politically appointed people want to be in charge and try to build and work around them. And there definitely were people that did that with Trump, and he wouldn't have it. He had his own way. I mean, if you look at the State Department, you look at the DOD, their way of doing things in certain areas is just very against what the Trump administration wanted. And so there was a huge clash. And I mean, listen, some of these attacks on Trump, there are people in the room, like my friend Nick Ayers, who worked for Pence. He's been critical of Trump in other places. He came out really strongly defending Trump, saying you would never say that. Patently false, total BS. So you've had these just like crazy attacks. And I think they're attacks of desperation. I think it's very clear Trump has a ton of momentum right now. What
would you see? Is it called DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency?
I love it. Yes.
What would that look like? I mean, the slash and burn at Twitter. How many people left? He's doing it with 20% of the workforce? I mean, Twitter is one thing. The government, I think we all know. And so he could only go 50% and do just this. Well, the government is obviously even more wasteful, of course, in some ways. So he could do more than 80%. I'm not saying that's what they would want to do, but I mean, listen, I have a lot of friends, even on the moderate left, who are totally aligned with the Department of Government Efficiency idea. Right. And the reason is because basically the left has special interests, the right does too. The left special interest, one of the biggest ones, is the government unions. And so they all know there's like tons of empty buildings in DC, there's people not working, there's tens of billions of dollars of Medicare, Medicaid fraud, there's tens of billions of dollars wasted on like these crazy unaccountable NGOs. They're giving money to NGOs in the Middle East to stop hate speech and stop misinformation. And it turns out the NGOs are giving money to are doing misinformation against Israel. So I mean, there's just waste everywhere you look. So of course it's a good thing.
Can I ask you a question, which is that Elon Musk clearly is an amazing entrepreneur, an amazing innovator. And when you look at Tesla and you look at SpaceX as an engineer, as just a physical exercise, it's like a remarkable, crazy situation. It does get more complicated, I think you'd agree, with Twitter, for example. Because Twitter, yes, he's been able to cut the staff and the site's not only continuing, but you could argue there's more people on it than before. And I would argue technically it's a better site, right? I mean, just the technical piece of it. But there's a lot of complicated issues around free speech and protections and things like that. And the truth is, as a business, arguably, actually, Twitter is not a better business today. In fact, it's a worse business, right? And so the question is, when it comes to dealing with very human issues, right, how he's going to deal with that and whether he's the best person to do that or not. And I say that as somebody who's a fan of his.
Well, listen, there's obviously a lot of brands that went after him, a lot of people that went after him with Twitter. I think the analogy with the government that's really positive, Andrew, is that if you just look at it from the perspective of any of us on the left or the right in the innovation world, like we're constantly reinventing how things should work, how processes should work. And that hasn't happened not only in the last 10 years in the government, but it hasn't even happened. We're not even upgraded to the 1990s in the government. It just works in a way that's just like generations and generations old. And if you ask people in DC that, oh, you naive outsiders, we've just put in things that don't allow that kind of change here. So it's like this very, very broken part of our society that if you take the smartest people and you focus on it, I think all of us know it can be made to work better.
I agree, but the reason I'm asking is somebody I know was mentioning, if you're really going to cut the government, which, by the way, there's lots of efficiency things we should all be doing, but there are probably places where there'll be disagreement. Would you keep the civil rights lawyers that work for ICE? Well, it's a real question. But there are some people who would say you have to keep the civil rights lawyers for ICE because there's going to be immigrants that are going to be mistreated and you need to do that. And there are other people who would say that that's crazy, right? And so then there's going to be a real debate about
that's why elections matter.
100%. And listen, I think this commission, if it's done right, and I'd love to be a part of it if they still decide to have me, I think it should have people with different backgrounds, different views on it. And I think that's healthy, right? I think there's been various rumors I've been hearing of names of people we respect on the moderate left as well. I think that'd be great because there's just so much obvious stuff to get done, and you should get it done in a way that doesn't break things, but just makes the government work better.
I didn't realize that you'd be potentially involved in.
I would love to be involved with the commission. Nothing's finalized, but I'm close to all these people, and I'm very passionate about these issues. And there's just hundreds of billions of dollars.
What do you think the lowest hanging fruit is?
I mean, the lowest hanging fruit is you have like too many people who aren't actually working, who aren't in the office, who aren't accountable. I mean, basically what happened, Andrew, is that about a generation ago, we stopped testing people before we hired them. So it used to be like when America went to the moon, right? The people running those departments, they had to pass hard tests. And then thanks to disparate impact, we got rid of the tests. Then we got rid of the ability to fire people.
Do you think it's going to be a staffing story that's going to be it? Or do you think it's going to be contracts that are going to be, you're going to reevaluate?
There's 7 million people who work for DC if you combine the civil service plus the contractors right around DC, right? It's a couple million more.
So you would short Washington, D.C. real estate right now?
I hope so. If it's successful.
Hey, Joe, Netanyahu's numbers are rising because he's consistently done more than people thought. So what's going to happen? What do you think is on the table, and when is it going to happen? After the election?
In Israeli politics?
Nope, in Israel and Iran.
Oh, well, listen, Israel has handled Hezbollah and Hamas really well. Iran's really weakened. The mullahs are not liked by their people. I'm generally not a fan of war, but I think the way you stop war is that you figure out how to make sure the mullahs don't have any more power to project terrorism around the Middle East. This is me speaking. It's not.
How about nuclear Iran? How's that? Is that going to?
I don't know if you noticed. There's somehow there's a nuclear plant on fire the last few days in Iran. Kind of like don't mention this side. It doesn't usually happen. I don't know how these things get on fire.
Get some pagers or something.
It's like
pagers.
It's like, but it's. I mean, listen, Iran needs to be stopped from having nuclear.
After the election, you figure you don't know anything.
I'm not gonna call it out ahead of time, but I think this administration is holding Israel back.
Will it be no oil facilities and no nuclear? That's what we heard, that they decided with the Bidens. No, we won't do it. We'll just do military.
That's what I'm hearing. But
really?
I'm hearing that they're holding them back. But I'm hearing that Israel would like there not to be nuclear facilities anymore there.
And he's done more than people thought, and it's worked for him. So I'm just wondering if that's going to continue.
You got to cut the head off this snake, Joe.
Well, preaching to the choir there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Still to come on Squawk Pod, what costs more than a Taylor Swift ticket? We'll be right back with the answer. You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Let's get back to Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Tickets for the World Series skyrocketing in price now on the secondary market, according to ticket reseller Ticket IQ. The average price for a seat, you ready for this, guys? $3,887. It's the most expensive average since Ticket IQ started tracking the data in 2010. I have not been to...
And that's why these two guys get paid.
I was going to say, I have not been to a Taylor Swift concert yet, but I think you could get Taylor Swift tickets for less.
For less than that.
Especially if you fly to the Netherlands or one of these other places.
That's probably true, too.
Well, I think there's some order in the world then. Yes, that's all you're saying. Yankees, Dodgers versus, come on.
You want Yankees, Dodgers, or you want Taylor?
Yeah, I want Yankees, Dodgers.
Okay.
I said there's some order in the world being restored. Thank you.
That's the podcast for today and for the week. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin, weekday mornings on CNBC starting at 6 a.m. Eastern. To get the smartest takes from that TV show right into your ears, follow us on Squawk Pod wherever you're listening now. We'll meet you right back here on Monday. Have a great weekend.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.